Pythagoras! Numbers, numbers! Now we're gonna take a trip back almost 2,600 years. We're in 570 BC, and the greatest Egyptian pharaohs have already gone to their graves. There's a new empire in town in Mesopotamia, an empire that will become the biggest the human race has ever seen, the Persian Empire. For the inhabitants of these remote lands, the only way to understand life was through magic, mythology, and the high priests who always possessed the absolute truth. On the other side of the world, a wave of highly enlightened souls are being harvested. Nepal is the birthplace of Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, and in ancient China, Confucius and Lao Tse have just arrived. In the eastern Mediterranean lands, a few city-states have begun to flourish, perhaps precisely because they've been busy with commerce rather than gods and war. They will play an important part in the advancement of human intellect. And in this context, on the island of Samos, an enigmatic and mysterious individual is educated, a man who will be key in the history of science and mathematics. His name is Pythagoras. We know very little about him. He left no body of written work, and his biographies were passed on by people who didn't actually live in his time and had heard the stories from others. Biographies that were part of one of the greatest collections of human understanding on Earth and were consumed on numerous occasions in the great library of Alexandria, where pyromaniacs were the most voracious devourers of knowledge. What we do know is that Pythagoras, with the support of a great sage of the time named Thales of Mileto, dedicated many years to traveling around the world in search of knowledge. He visited Egypt, Babylonia, Arabia, and he even reached as far as India. He eventually returned to the Mediterranean with an enormous amount of knowledge and an incredible desire to share it. But far from considering himself a sage, he saw himself more as a simple lover of knowledge, a love he would never be able to fully realize. By the way, he invented the discipline of philosophy. The word literally means love of wisdom. Pythagoras found in Crotone, what is now southern Italy, a place to found his school of thought. It was a favorite location among many Greeks. It would become a very exclusive school where everyone lived and studied the master's teachings, which were always kept secret. The school would become influential in local politics over time, and this would become counterproductive to Pythagoras' teachings. The school admitted both men and women, and one of the brightest women, Theanos, would become Pythagoras' wife. She was the first known woman mathematician in history. The Pythagorean followers believed in transmigration of souls and thought they could be reborn as animals, which meant they were strict vegetarians. If you ate meat, you could be eating your grandfather reincarnated as a cow. For Pythagoras and his students, the secret was in the numbers. The whole universe could be understood and represented in numeric form. From the harmony of the planets to the musical scales, from fickle forms of art to the unarguable weight of justice. His most important feat was the famous Pythagorean theorem, an idea that was already used by the Egyptians and Babylonians in construction, but which he proved mathematically. In a right triangle, the sum of the areas of the two squares on the legs are equal to the area of the square on the hypotenuse. With this formula, we can build a pyramid, calculate the position of a spaceship, locate our position with GPS, solve a crime scene, and much, much more. No writings by Pythagoras have ever reached modern man. We know of his inventions and discoveries through philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, or the great mathematician Euclid, who claimed Pythagoras as a great influence on him. We associate theories and ideas with Pythagoras that were very likely created by students of his teachings long after his death. This is because the brand Pythagoras was so respected by all. He was also mythified in his time and even more so after his death, making him seem godlike. They say he had the power of ubiquity, which permitted him to be in two different cities at the same time, giving two lectures simultaneously. Like the mythical Orpheus, or later Dante, it was said that he traveled to the underworld to see with his own eyes what went on there. Then he came home. Another legend says he was able to save a dog that was being abused by its owner. He recognized in the animal's howls the voice of an old friend who had been reincarnated. But religion is much more powerful than philosophy or science, two concepts that have just been conceived. Only time will change this, right?
I prefer the staff of experience than the fast cart of fortune. The philosopher travels by foot.
Pythagoras has a crater on the moon named after him. Pythagoras' school on Crotone was ransacked by a furious mob led by a man who had been denied entry into the school. It is said that Pythagoras fled into exile, never to return, but his school continued to grow and prosper. His brand is still famous today.